time, as I've covered on In Plain Sight before, MMR, vaccines, autism. Obviously, it's in the news again, the US predominantly, rather than the UK as such. But it's crazy. I mean, the MMR vaccine was, I think it was licensed in, if memory serves, in 1971 in the US. And then the second dose of the MMR was introduced for recommendation in 1989, if my memory's right. But measles had been virtually eliminated about 2000 in the US. And certainly in the UK, it was virtually non-existent up until the Wakefield article. Now, if anyone has ever read the Wakefield article, which pretty much started all this hysteria and vaccine anxiety, obviously the pandemic contributed and things, but if we're just talking about purely about the MMR, that's the only study that's ever been done that said there was a link between the MMR and autism. And we know it was debunked, and 9 of the 13 authors distanced themselves from it, and he was struck off. And interestingly, his brother used to work at the hospital that I used to work at. He was a gastroenterological surgeon, lovely bloke. But anyway, he was struck off, and obviously it was kind of debunked as having any factual accuracy at all. Now, it's the only study that's ever said there's a link between vaccines and autism, specifically MMR. If it had been published in the Sunday Sun, no one would have given it any credibility. It was published in The Lancet, one of the most reputable medical journals at the time. So, of course, people gave it credibility. That's perfectly understandable. But it was based on a study of 12 children. 12 children. You don't have to have had any background in research, understand research, like research, be involved in nursing, healthcare, anything of the sort, to understand you can't take 12 children and generalize the results to a population. It's too small a sample size. You just can't. And the fact that there was 12 children in this study, that he then generalized the results that MMR vaccines cause autism, is what created all these problems in the first place in relation to the MMR and autism. Now, I was diagnosed as being autistic in my late 40s. I didn't have the MMR jab because even though it was about 1971, it wasn't really widespread use in the UK until about 1976, I think. But my mum didn't believe in vaccines. Not that they really existed back then either, but she was big about, if you get it, you'll better immune system and all those things. And that's totally true. Tried telling my little self that when I had mumps and all of my glands were swollen all over my body, and I might have given you a different response. But I totally get it. But what caused me to be autistic then? Because it wasn't vaccines. What caused all the people before the MMR to develop autism? It's neurological, and I am not saying there is no link between the MMR vaccine and autism. What I'm saying is there's never been any definitive proof that there is a link between the MMR vaccine and autism. That's my stance. I'm not saying there isn't. I'm not saying it doesn't. I'm saying there's no research. There's a wealth of research that says it doesn't. There's only the one study, really, that highlighted the fact that it does. So it doesn't really have any credible weight behind it. And all it's doing is causing so much anxiety and problems. Kids are dying from measles. Kids are developing encephalopathy. I can't even speak. It's one. Encephalitic symptoms. It can cause blindness. It can cause deafness in children. And that's only measles. That's not counting rubella and mumps, etc., and all the problems. And adults who haven't been vaccinated or haven't been exposed to it can get it later in life. You can get chickenpox on the inside of your lungs, even though that's not part of the MMR, but I'm on about childhood illnesses. There's all of these things that can cause so many problems. And this anxiety is just so unnecessary. You can have a realistic conversation about we don't know about the side effects and the long-term, problems this might cause. But we do know that measles, mumps, rubella used to kill children, can cause problems in adulthood. It's a very, very real issue. And I don't know if, there's never an easy answer to this. And I can sit here as an infection control nurse and say I understand the benefits of the vaccine. I can definitely understand the problems that these illnesses cause when people get them, because I've seen it. Like I said, I've seen a man who never had chickenpox as a kid, who was in ITU and he had chickenpox on the inside of his lungs. Absolutely horrendous. Hello. And it's yeah, it's sorry, I'm just faffing about on my camera there. It's just scary, and I don't know if the way it's being approached, creating this additional anxiety after a pandemic when everyone's just got vaccine hesitancy in general, is a good way to go about it. These are very real childhood illnesses that were virtually eliminated, and now we've seen outbreaks in Wales a few years ago. We've seen outbreaks in, is it Minnesota in America? There's these big outbreaks, and like I said, they haven't been seen since the 2000s when it was virtually eliminated, and it's really, really scary stuff. And I don't know, with everything else that's going on in the world, these are proven vaccines that help children and adults. And just because someone hasn't been vaccinated and has never caught measles, mumps or rubella is probably just happenstance. I went to university. I was never vaccinated against meningitis because it didn't exist then. And I went through college and university, didn't get meningitis, and don't know anyone in my colleges or universities that got meningitis. I know of universities that were further down the country that had big outbreaks of meningitis when I was at college and university. It's just happenstance. It's just circumstance. It's not necessarily because you haven't been exposed to it and haven't got it, therefore you're not at risk. I'll be at risk of meningitis. I've just never been around any cohorts of people who've had meningitis, but I know people have had meningitis, and as an IPCN I know people who've died from meningitis. So the whole vaccine thing, I think, needs continued conversations, debate, investigations, research, all of that stuff. It just needs to have it in a slightly more measured, less hysterical fashion, because there are right answers and there are valid questions to be asked on both sides. And as always, within plain sight, I'm just trying to find the middle ground. And a lot of people don't like you talking about the middle ground because it's not polarizing and it doesn't get people up in arms and it doesn't get people's emotional juices flowing because you don't take a stance against being anti-vax, etc., which is what a lot of the media likes to purport. The whole point of In Plain Sight was to take the middle ground, look at both sides, what's good, what's bad, and what is the truth that's in the middle, and let people make their own decisions. And I think that's what's lacking currently, certainly on social media, and that was the whole point of me doing In Plain Sight. Hello. So for those of you that have been listening to me for the last 10 minutes at 1 o'clock in the afternoon, why aren't you doing something more exciting? And I'm off to get some screws because I'm doing some DIY stuff. And I will have a proper video that looks at this in more depth, and the facts and the evidence and the hysteria and what we know and what we don't know and what still needs to be investigated and all of those things coming up in the next day or two. But for those of you that join me, thank you. And for anyone that listens to this later, I hope you enjoy or did enjoy the rest of your day. See you later.